So it is finally here, a reel that I've waited almost 1 year to be released, and that is the Abu Garcia LX992Z. Now apparently it's not called the REVO LX992Z like I thought, because there's nothing about REVO on this box, just this guy's name. So alright, let's get into it. Now, typical Abu Garcia fashion is very well packaged, as you got your foam on top. Alright, let's check that out. So you can see you got the spare spool here. You got oil, just like Shimano. And then you got the reel. Let's take a look at this thing. Actually, let's see what else is in the bag first, or in the box I should say. User's card, I guess some kind of instructions, schematics, and a bag, which is, you know, to be honest, not that great a quality considering the price of this reel, but we'll go more into that later. Let's take a look at this reel. I mean, it's relatively smooth. You know, it's not any Shimano or DAIWA, but then again, Abu Garcias have never been quite as smooth as Shimanos or DAIWAs. Alright, it says pitching and then casting. Alright, so now that I've given you guys a good look at this thing, I'm going to do my customary inspection and I will be right back. Okay guys, so I'm done with my inspection and let's go over the specs and features of this reel, and there are quite a lot. Now, the first thing I wanted to say is that there was a previous version or a previous reel that this reel is replacing. It was called the REVO AE74LTZ, and basically that reel was I guess a factory tuned version of the Generation 3 REVO LTX, which was their bait finesse reel. But this reel here apparently is based off the Roxani platform instead of the REVO platform, which is kind of strange because in Japan the Roxani platform is considered lower than the REVO platform. But I think I know why they did that, and probably the same reason why the REVO EXD is based off the Roxani platform. And the first reason is that the line guide is farther away from the spool than the current REVOs, which are very short and square shaped. And the second reason is just speculation by me, but I think the next generation REVOs are going to be using this frame more than likely. But once again, that's just speculation. So this is a tuned version of the Roxani BF8 bait finesse reel from Abu Garcia, which is their cheapest bait finesse reel. So since this is a tuned version, who exactly tuned this reel? Well, it's this guy right here. And his name is, I think, Katsutaka Ime, if I said that right. So I believe this guy, at minimum, is a pro angler in Japan. Now, if you've never heard of this guy's name, you may have heard of the company he owns, and that is Imakatsu. Now, if you look at Imakatsu in Japan, you'll probably realize that that brand is actually a step above even Megabass as far as the quality and realism of their lures, at least in my opinion. So yeah, this guy, Ime, is very well respected. Apparently he is associated or affiliated with Abu Garcia enough to be able to come out with his own signature reel. But I will say this, I think the previous version, the AE74LTZ, was better looking than this. So on with the specs and features. This reel sports an aluminum frame with C6 carbon side plates. Now, one of the, I guess, upgraded features on this reel is that it has 9+1 bearings, but they claim that they are hybrid ceramic versions of the REVO EXD bearings. So that means they have ceramic balls, but the grooves inside the bearings, or the raceways I guess you can say, are modified to allow freer casting for, you know, conventional sized balls. Now it's got what they call a recessed reel foot, and the explanation for this is that there are reels out there that have the split, but they widen the split on the reel foot for these reels in order to be able to push that spool lower, making the reel very low profile. Now the knobs, while they are kind of pretty plain looking, they could have given us, you know, colored end caps or something like that, but they are the soft touch BFC knobs, probably leftovers from ZPI. Now you can see it's sporting the carbon fiber drag star, probably the same one as the REVO LTX BF8, and it's got the 90mm carbon handle. And I have to say that the carbon handle is pretty generic looking, and as you can see when I did the unboxing, there were no extra different colored pieces like the LTX came with, and that's pretty disappointing. Now it's got a, I guess, a hook keeper, which apparently I can't open. Yeah, I don't know how to get this hook keeper out of here. I mean, the only thing sticking out is this piece. There we go. Feels like that thing is spring-loaded. But yeah, hook keeper, pretty much same as any other Doyo made reel that's got a hook keeper. And it's got the AE74 style trim, which is this trim that has these unique trapezoid looking cutouts, and this is something that's been used in several other Abu Garcia special edition reels in the past. Now, of course, everything clicks. The star drag clicks, the spool tension clicks. Now I will say this, that Abu Garcia is getting better with their clicking spool tensions, as feels more positive, and it looks like the space in between clicks seems to be shrinking. So they're kind of getting close to, you know, the DAIWA micro click and some of the SHIMANOs as well. Now I'm glad to say that they have that JDM soft clutch, so that means there is no mush when I press this thumb bar, just like on my REVO LTX BF8. So the mush part that I feel in the American Abu Garcia Revos must be an American thing, but the Japanese, they're not putting up with that, and they made sure that this thumb bar was mush free. Of course, the brake dial clicks. Now, I shouldn't say of course, because, you know, on the REVO EXD it didn't click. But here's something a lot of you guys might like: the drag clicks. So it's got a clicking drag star as well as a clicking drag. Alright, so now that we got all that out of the way, it's time to get to the nitty-gritty and pull the scale out. Okay, so you can see the scale is out, and just for reference, I did bring out my other two Abu Garcia Bay Finesse reels, the LTX and the REVO Ultra Cast. Alright, so when it comes to weight, this reel is supposed to weigh 160 grams, but we want ounces. Okay, so 5.6 ounces. So somewhere around the range of the new DAIWA Alpha's Air TW, but I don't know, when I pick it up, it doesn't scream super lightweight. I guess because of the size. So when you compare that to the LTX BF8 at 4.6, you're looking at an ounce heavier. And then the Ultra Cast is pretty heavy. Well, actually not that heavy, but almost 6.2. But the Ultra Cast looks much better than both of these reels. So of course, next up, we're gonna get a weight on that spool, which is something I've been wanting to do for months now. Now, before we get into the spool weight, let's take a look at the braking system on the LX992Z. Now, it's got a total of 28 settings, which is typical of Abu Garcia. As you can see here, they have riding, and it says pitching this way and casting this way, and then I guess max braking is there. So for casting, they want you to have more brake than pitching, which I guess that makes sense, but we'll have to find out on the water. But it's kind of cool having that riding there. Kind of makes you think that this braking system is more special than it really is. And I also like that yellow indicator arrow that lets you know you're right in the center. But speaking of special, let's open this thing up and you'll see that it's basically the same static magnetic mag track system found in pretty much almost all magnetic brake systems coming out of Korea and China. Now this has a total of 10 magnets, as you can see. Now this bank of magnets is supposed to be 3 millimeters thick, while this bank is supposed to be 1.5 millimeters thick. So it's pretty much the same brake system as the LTX. And also it's the same in the fact that you can remove magnets or add magnets or change the configuration around. And in fact, if you go on Abu Garcia's website, there's a chart there where they give you, depending on your lure weight, how you should configure the magnets. Now that adjustability is awesome, but it's very impractical because if you need to remove some magnets when changing a lure, where are you gonna stick them when you're out on the water? So cool in theory, just not very practical. All right, so let's get to what we've finally been waiting for. We're gonna get a weight on this spool. Now it feels pretty light. As you can see, it's got a huge metal plate to conduct that magnetic current. That's kind of disappointing. Short spool shaft, and of course a bearing. Spool shaft looks to be made of aluminum. And don't forget, we got this spare spool here that we haven't looked at. And basically, this is a deeper spool. Yep, it's got aluminum shaft, bearing. It still feels pretty light as well, but probably twice as deep as the standard spool. Now disappointingly, in this day and age, even though this is a shallow spool, it's actually pretty deep compared to a lot of competing bait finesse reels. So this reel is probably not going to be for, your lightest of lightweight lures, and maybe you won't be able to, handle a trout magnet so easily, but there's only one way to find out. Alright, so the scale is on, the spools are out, and the LX992Z has some big shoes to fill because the REVO LTX BF8 still currently has the lightest stock bait finesse spool in the world. And it weighs 7.5 grams with the bearing. So I weighed this without the bearing, And this spool weighs 6 grams. So what does the new spool weigh? Oh shit, 10 grams. Okay, so full disclosure, I knew that this spool was not going to be as light as the LTX because there was some Japanese angler on Instagram that was complaining how heavy the spool was, but I didn't think it was going to be 10 grams. That's pretty damn disappointing considering the price of this reel. Now the deep spool is actually lighter than the shallow spool. That doesn't make any damn sense. 10 grams for the shallow, 9 grams for the deep. So when they're filled with line, they're probably going to weigh virtually the same. Now that is pretty damn disappointing. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and pull out my bearing tool and we're going to get a weight on these spools without the bearings. So I went ahead and pulled the bearings off of all 3 spools, and just to reiterate my point, REVO LTX BF8, 6.1 grams. It measured 6 grams on my other scale, but either way, that is still the lightest bait finesse spool in the world for a stock reel. Now here's the deeper optional spool for the LX992, 7.8, so you know that's well under 9 grams, which is my acceptable minimum for bait finesse. And the shallow spool, 8.4. That is very, very disappointing, guys. Very, very disappointing considering what I paid for this reel. Now, I think most of that weight is due to this huge metal plate, and I think I can understand why they put this plate here instead of, you know, using this size metal plate that's on the LTX. And that's because, you know, despite putting all the magnets on the REVO LTX, this spool is still very, very finicky. It is very inconsistent. It is the most prone to backlash, and you need pretty much perfect optimal conditions in order to fish this reel consistently without having to pick out overruns and backlashes. And it's probably due to this smaller little plate, but I don't think they should have, you know, gave this huge plate. They could have met somewhere in the middle. And another thing is, I can't even swap this spool into the LX992 because the Roxani frame has a bigger spool. This is 33 millimeters while this is 32, so they are not interchangeable. Does look pretty though in this gold, but we'll get more into that in a moment. Alright guys, it's time to wrap this video up. And to do that, I am going to go over my likes and dislikes of this reel. But before we get into that, I'm going to go over a couple of things that I forgot to mention earlier. And the first thing is that this reel only comes in 1 gear ratio, an 8.0 to 1 in both right and left hand. And the second thing is something that's very hard to notice, and that is going to be underneath this trim piece is a carbon fiber insert. It's very stealth. Alright, so let's get on to the likes and dislikes, and of course we're gonna start off with the dislikes. Now this reel to my door cost about $380. So that is actually approaching Shimano Calcutta Conquest BFS territory, which makes this my second most expensive bait finesse reel. Now strangely enough, I don't mind that price, but the first complaint is for that price, this spool should have been much lighter. It should have been well under 7 grams. And it also should have been shallower. I say that because of course it comes with a spare deep spool. So yeah, that's the first complaint, is that this spool is way too heavy for a reel that costs this much. Now the second complaint is going to be the looks. Now it's not an ugly reel, but if you look at the teaser pics that I'm going to show you guys, the prototypes of this reel looked a lot better in my opinion. In particular, this prototype made by a company called Revive that had this red spool with silver trim accents that really would match with these red racing stripes. Now, to make things worse, Abu Garcia actually put on their website that they don't plan on releasing that reel. So yeah, that kind of sucks. And as I said before, the previous model, the AE74LTZ, looked better to me. It looked more special. Now, other than, you know, these red racing stripes, this reel is kind of plain. So yeah, that's a complaint. And of course, the knob end caps could have been a different color. So basically this reel looks too stealth in my opinion for a special edition model. Now, what do I like about the reel? Well, for the price, you still do get a lot of reel for the money. Once again, you get that spare spool that's deeper for more versatility. So that means you can go trout fishing with a shallow spool in the morning, and then in the afternoon swap spools out to the deeper one and do some bass fishing. So in that respect, it is very, very versatile, as you get 2 spools for the price. Now, of course, it's got the ZPI soft touch knobs, the carbon fiber drag star, which is still a very rare aftermarket option. You get the click and drag, and don't forget you get the hybrid ceramic special bearings. So maybe the combination of the bearings and maybe the way the brakes are set up will allow this reel to perform better than my expectations, but we'll have to find out. So that means I'm going to be stringing up this reel with some light fluorocarbon, and I'm going to remount it on this special rod, and I'm going to try to long bomb some spoons for trout, or even do some deeper jigging for crappie. But overall, I got mixed feelings about the reel. The specs were not what I was expecting, but on the other hand, JDM BFS reels don't come out very often. So with that being said, I had to get one. Alright guys, thanks a lot.